The US state of Oklahoma can be called many things. The Sooner State, Cowboy Country, the state that is currently on eBay for $30, or the Panhandle State. The Oklahoma Panhandle seems like it's out of place, doesn't it? A small rectangle stuck onto a bigger rectangle. Looks like it was part of one of its neighbouring states before. Well, that's because it was. Oklahoma's Panhandle comes from its only southern neighbour, Texas. You want to see what it looks like when Texas owns it? See that? Fits like a geopolitical glove. But now that glove's part of Oklahoma, giving the state that distinct cleaver look. But how come Texas chose to give itself this territorial surgery, and how come Oklahoma ended up snagging it? Well, to clarify first, when Texas owned what is now the Oklahoma Panhandle, it didn't look as simple like this. It looked something like this, which sets us in the year 1845. The recently independent Republic of Texas joins the United States, joining in on the internal political conflicts between free versus slave states, on the side of the slave states. While currently, still in 1845, the Republic of Texas was in control of this, which was the entirety of its territory while it was part of Mexico before its independence. And all of this is just territory disputed between Mexico and Texas, then the US when Texas became a state. But the Mexican-American War soon changes those claiming dreams into a reality, Texas now being in control of all of this sweet, sweet ex-Mexican land. But most of that claimed land they got ain't staying Texan for long, because in 1850, a handful of bills got passed through American Congress called the Compromise of 1850, which were a bunch of papers that went over what they were going to do with the lands they won from the war. California becoming a US state, slightly organising the unorganised territory, one of them 8-lane highways from here to here, and of course, dealing with Texas. The territory of Texas had crossed over the 36th parallel. This parallel's significance dates back to 1820 during the Missouri Compromise, which stated that in the land gained from the Louisiana Purchase, the north side of the line, except Missouri, had slavery banned, and the rest of it kept slavery. It may or may not come as a shock to you that Texas loved its slaves and didn't like the idea of having their state territory being combined with free slaves, and I don't mean money-wise. So they done the only logical thing they could. They chose to sell off this land to the federal government. As to be expected, the land sold off includes the region of the Oklahoma Panhandle. But who to give this strip of land to, exactly? Of the current territories the US held in the area, they decided to give it to no one, because the US was busy with, again, organising territory. So they just left this as unassigned land, or the neutral strip, if you want to call it that. Whoa, check that out. There's a new territory north of Texas, the territory of Kansas. Would you look at that? Texas's border on the 36th parallel and Kansas's territorial border on the 37th makes a neat little rectangular strip of land between the two, even creating the shape of the Oklahoma state. So now that the Panhandle is no longer part of Texas, how did it become part of Oklahoma? Well, looking at it, it would have made sense to just give it to Oklahoma, right? Well, yes and no. You see, the remaining territory that makes up Oklahoma already is made up of two territories. The group of Indian territories from the forced displacements, and the Panhandle. This piece of land the government didn't know what to do with, besides making it public land, with no local government there. But just because no governance was there doesn't mean that it stops people from settling there. In fact, the neutral strip had begun to see settlement just after the Civil War, mainly from cattlemen and ranchers. It wouldn't be until the mid-1880s though when big things started happening in the strip. After a minor dispute about the Cherokee Indian Territory claiming to own the neutral strip got resolved, the strip had become effectively free to settle on. But there was an issue. The land wasn't surveyed, which was needed in order for the land to be settled on officially. But that doesn't stop the hundreds of people rushing over to the strip to claim land as theirs under squatters' rights. After being a place where the residents were basically called squatters, they chose to turn this lawless land into self-governing territory, and done all it could to get recognition from the US to be granted official territory status or statehood. After carefully surveying the lands in the strip themselves and renaming the strip to Cimmaron territory, they made a makeshift government for the territory. Well, not really a government, it was more like a bunch of vigilante committees coming together to form a government. And even then, when the political bodies were elected, not everyone was happy with the results, with committees arguing over who is the true government of the territory. The committees tried to resolve it by getting the US Congress to choose one of them, and while Congress did respond, They responded by choosing none of them. But you know, all problems eventually find their solutions, and Cimmaron Territory's solution finally came in 1889. You know, all that Indian territory next door? Well, good news for the Cimmaron Territory, that territory just got smaller. Thanks to the Oklahoma land rush of 1889, Americans could settle on Indian territory for the final time, this time for realsies, which is what a lot of residents from the Cimmaron Territory did. Then a year later, those settled lands on the Indian Territory and the Neutral Strip were organised to create Oklahoma Territory. A few more years and land rushes on Indian Territory and the Oklahoma Territory looks like this, before the two territories finally joined together on the 16th of November 1907 to create the state of Oklahoma. Hopefully that can answer the second question. And here's some fun trivia before I conclude. The two territories could have joined the Union separately, but were denied because of political sense between them and the government. The Panhandle almost became a part of Kansas, but the bills that were approved by the Senate and House of Representatives never got signed by the President at the time. Lastly, the border of Oklahoma and New Mexico don't follow a continuous straight line from the vertical Texas-New Mexico border. Anyway, that's the end of that. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.